Welcome to this edition of Your Health, Your Wealth. It's January 2026, and I'm excited to talk with my guest today, someone I've known for a number of years. Just a wealth of knowledge. I know that this is going to be one of many podcasts we're going to do together, and so I'm really excited about getting into this today. But I want to welcome my guest, Ari Rastegar. He's a best-selling author of the book, The Gift of Failure, investor, real estate mogul, portfolio of north of billions probably at this point. It's like every time I look up, it's growing more and more. He has a podcast, Behind the Rise, and a major contributor to a number of news outlets, including Fox News, Fox Business. So excited to dive into this podcast with Ari. And looking forward to our conversation. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Dr. Patton. And I think the other side of that discussion, I appreciate the very kind words, but you've also been my doctor for many years also. So you've taken good care of me too over the years as well. So I think we've had a good back and forth. So I like the relationships when both sides are giving and receiving.
Absolutely, man. And I've been following you, and I love listening to the podcast that you're on. I love your personal story, and I've read your book, and I want to start by talking about your book. Sometimes you read books, and particularly self-help books and so forth, and it's like someone talking to you from a podium. But when I read The Gift of Failure, it was like a conversation. And I learned so much from it. I learned that we like similar authors. We like similar books, Think and Grow Rich, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We share some about my favorite poem is Invictus. But but for a lot of people who are on this journey, it's a new year. They want to do things different, whether it be with their health, whether it be with their finance. We don't talk enough about failure and how to do that. So, just in general, how has failure really shaped who you are today?
Well, look, failure, and at this point in my life, I think the only thing I've gotten good at is failing, I think. And I think failing properly is also a skill, in fairness. And I think there's a lot of baggage around that word. So just off the top, we are trained as a society or as a culture, and probably not just as a culture, American. I think this might be a global phenomenon, is that the word failure is bad. Yeah. And so at one point we got this re-signification or this redefinition of a word that is so inherently human. And what I like to think about is I have 3 beautiful children, 2 girls, 1 boy, and I think of it always of when my oldest daughter was learning how to walk. And so there was a time where as parents, you look at this, this little human, and Picasso used to say it took me 4 years to learn how to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a kid. And I think that learning so much from children and not giving them that respect of being little humans, I think is something we're missing out on, quite frankly. So in watching Victoria, my oldest, learn how to walk, we lived in New York City. We had a little apartment that we thought was a mansion at the time. And, she'd stand up and fall down. Uh-huh. And of us as parents, we'd look and say, oh my God, she did a great job. And so there was this attitude, this emotional response that as parents, which I think later evolves into our educators, which evolves into our coaches, which evolves into our teachers and so on, where we were encouraging failure, literally saying, do it again. You can do it. Try it again. And all these are the underlying principles of the Think and Grow Rich or of the, all these things that we read, to where the human experience is designed for experience. And so it starts at that young age. But at one point, and maybe someone smarter than me can figure out when this change happens where it turns into, oh, you can do it, stand up. It's not like, oh, you didn't learn how to walk, oh, she'll never walk again. She's not going to learn how to walk. Let's throw this one out the trash. You just keep trying until you do it. And then at one point, maybe it's modern education, maybe it's kindergarten. I think it's before that, but saying, no, you didn't do it. You tried to do something and you did it wrong. And that was all of a sudden wrong, not the process. And we say a lot, in our teams, we have T-shirts, Rastegar T-shirts that say TTP, and that's trust the process. And this is the process. So my definition of failure, after looking at it and failing so damn much at basically everything I've ever done, but taking back and looking at it and say, whoa, failure is not only not bad, failure is learning how to win.
Yeah.
And literally, and it sounds a little pithy, to say it, but that is literally the process of how we learn. We try something, we try it again. As you were in medical school and I was in law school, this is what clinicals were for. This is what, working with mentors and apprenticeships and throughout the history of the world, the greatest of anything had coaches. And you go to take the shot and say, nope, go try it again, go over here. I'll go like this, try, And so I don't know how all that got discombobulated, but quite literally, the only true failure that I can think of is not trying again.
Absolutely.
So if you continue to try and you take a moment of introspection to look back for a second, and I keep thinking about my young daughter because the innocence that goes into it, the way you try again and you kind of almost effortlessly, joyfully. I'm not saying I enjoy failing by any stretch of the imagination yet. But there's something now where if something goes wrong, and you look at the greatest of anything in the world, like baseball's an easy analogy because you strike out 7 out of 10 times, you're not just good, you're in the Hall of Fame. And so like the greatest shooters on earth, if you're getting 52%, you're incredible. I mean, but then, So my point is, I think there's a whole new school of thought around looking at how we view just that word and the negative connotation that has been built around it is really the source, because how we learn quite literally is by failing. But as John Maxwell, who I know you like as well, said, as long as we continue to fail forward, and I have a little bit of a different look at this point, because like in basketball, they call it a step back jumper for a reason. Like meaning, so you don't always fail forward. Sometimes you fail back and you get that little bounce back and you go back and hit them because everyone loves a comeback.
And that's why I wanted to start here. And I see it in my kids as well, is that we don't embrace this enough. And the one thing I love in talking with you and your energy and your story is that, talking to you now, I mean, literally, this guy has $1 billion portfolio. We're going to talk about some of the exciting things that's going on in Dallas on McKinney Street and all of that. But he also started out flipping burgers. And, and if you read your book, which I highly advise listeners and those watching to really pick it up, you learn about the story of Ari Rastegar and the times, but every time got back up, and now he has built this portfolio. So, if you're wondering, like, why did he invite this wonderful guest on to talk about failure? Because there is something in that in everybody. And kids nowadays, unfortunately, I don't think they know how to fail, and even in my view, I the first time I applied to medical school at Xavier, they had a wall that they put up, you put your picture up when you got into medical school. So you walk by every day, and the first person goes up, and second day. And it's right in the science building, so you had to go by it. And every day I had to walk by and see that wall, and my picture wasn't up there.
Oh.
And I ended up, going to graduate school, got a Master of Science. But that 2 years getting that Master of Science was actually 2 of the greatest years of my life, and it prepared me for medical school. And I don't think if I would have made it through medical school had I gone right out of undergrad, because I had to mentally prepare. So, but I could have taken that and just said, screw it, I'm done, I'm not going to apply again. But how do we use these failures to move forward?
Well, I'll tell you, I have a similar, in a similar way, I had a very bad speech impediment growing up. and I had to go to 7 years of speech therapy to learn how to talk. So I was a very awkward kid. You know, I was a wrestler. So my wrestling coach, who's one of my dear friends, I actually talked with him this morning. I talk about him in the book a little bit too. He's my guy. You know, he'll say is like, you know, being a wrestler, that's how you learn, you know, how to operate from your back. You know, and he'll equate this to learning from wrestling. And maybe he's right. I was a mediocre wrestler on a great team. But I didn't have the grades or the ambition in high school to get into a university. So I went to 2 community colleges, to Richland Community College in Dallas, and then to Blinn Community College in Bryan, Texas, before I transferred into Texas A&M. I did graduate, you know, top of my class, and, you know, went on to school in Mexico and then law school and, you know, all that. But similar to you is those years in community college were the best thing I ever did because I wasn't ready for A&M. Yeah. I didn't know how to study. I didn't have the study skills. I didn't have the patience. And I learned how to do it in that environment where luckily the grades didn't transfer to A&M. So I graduated, you know, again with high honors, but, you know, I, you know, had mostly, you know, by the time I got through Blinn, I was making some A's, but I had a C in there, had some B's in there. And luckily just the transfer credits came and I got the chance by the time I got to A&M and kind of knew what I was doing to get the A's, to get the GPA that got me into the study abroad in Mexico, then ultimately got me into law school. So just like you, I'm very grateful, you know, for that time. I'm not saying it didn't suck at the moment. I didn't have, you know, any wisdom at the time. I was beating myself up. I was saying, I'm dumb. I can't do this. I was working at Double Dave's Pizza, you know, trying to just, you know, making $2.86 an hour, just trying to get through community college, thinking, how am I going to do it? But then looking back, you see that, you know, and look, I'm not Mother Teresa, but, you know, I'm a man of God. You know, my work is my worship. I fall short of that every single day in every single regard. But, you know, I can look back and say, wow, like there was a golden thread, like there was something that connected this together that I needed to fail, so to speak. I needed to get the thing that allowed the rest of this to be possible. And I think all of us, because I'm just an average dude, man, like there ain't nothing special about me in like, I'm lucky I got all my senses. I'm in this country. I got 4 limbs. But if you keep showing up, you keep doing it, and you keep trying, and you take that curious mind, I have to believe that it can be done.
I tell you, that's awesome. And you say you're the average dude, but, you know, not the average guy is building one of the tallest buildings in Dallas right now. So
you want to know? I'll tell you a funny story about that for your folks. So back to failure. I'll give it to you again. 20 years ago, when I was at A&M, my chief of staff, Major Miller, who you've talked to on communications here or there, is my chief of staff. So my best friend's in 7th grade. And one of our other dear friends, TJ Frank, who's one of the biggest brokers, real estate brokers in Dallas now. He went to SMU, Major went to UT, I went to, you know, A&M, and we got back together in Dallas where we had gone to middle school and high school together. And there was a nightclub on the street called McKinney Avenue, which is like the Park Avenue of Dallas is how I describe it. And there wasn't as much Dallas back then as there are now. Now there's a gazillion restaurants and clubs and lounges, and, you know, I'm not cool enough to get into any of those places. But, you know, at this point, like, I was lucky to get a kamikaze shot or something, you know, trying to get into this bar. So there was this club called Glass, all right? So we went and stood in line, the 3 of us, tons of people outside. And while we're waiting in line, all of a sudden, it starts to rain profusely. I'm talking about like not a drizzle, okay? And by the time I got to the front, my shoes were so covered in mud, these white Air Force Ones that I still have, by the way. And I have a pair of Rastegar Air Force Ones that I put the logo on the side and stuff that I look to remember this moment. We got to the front, and the bouncer says to my buddies, like, no, they can come. But he's like, but this guy, like that, there's no way, and didn't let me in. And I remember standing outside of this place, and I wish I had some deep, inspirational moment. I definitely didn't. I was just more pissed that I didn't get into the club, and I spent the last $20 I had in gas money to get there, and and whatever. And I'm looking through the window. I'm like, I definitely want to be with that crowd, not out here. But they didn't let me in. And 15 years later, I went back and bought the building. And then after about 8 years of talking to the city council, talking to the committees, the homeowner committees, the Oak Lawn Committee. I took hundreds and hundreds of personal meetings with condo owners, business owners, and just explaining what we believed would be the future of this corridor, what Dallas could really become, because this particular site had the zoning and entitlements, which has become our expertise, to only build about 20 feet of height. So think 2 stories. It's an old commercial building. It's been vacant for years. So to do what I thought was needed for the city would be a 400-foot super tall skyscraper for residential, because I thought all these businesses would move there and want to be in that area for all the reasons Dallas is booming. And I guess I got kind of lucky because Goldman Sachs decided to put their second largest office in the world across the street, literally. The Texas Stock Exchange is directly across the street, literally. And so through that process of trying to explain how this community should shape and how the laws should evolve to support this growing market, I've been able to get that done. And in this year, we're going to break ground on what will be the tallest building ever built in Uptown. And I'm taking those white Air Force Ones and I'm framing them in a glass box in the lobby because, you just got to do it, right?
You got to do it, man. I mean, those are the Air Force Ones. I love hearing that.
A guy asked me, a friend of mine asked me that's, kind of does a bunch of stuff with Nike. And I got a little kick out of it. He was like, and he kind of like you, he's like, Ari, how did you do that? Like, how did this happen? I was like, I don't know. I just did it. And then at that moment, he's like, well, what do you want to say to young entrepreneurs? And kind of dawned on me, like, just do it.
Exactly. So next to your Jordans, you're going to have the new line of Nike Rastegar Air Force Ones.
Ari Force Ones.
Ari Force Ones.
I don't think anybody's going to buy them like they buy Jordans, but maybe I can get me and you a pair, and maybe we get 2 pairs sold.
Man, that is good. But what's going on in Dallas, and I love to hear your take on this, because I follow your commentary on a number of business, and there are a lot of exciting things with the thought of the new stock exchange, and I know that you have been real heavy in the real estate. There's a lot going on with oil and gas. Where do you see the future as far as what's going on in Dallas to Texas with the new stock exchange and everything else? And how are you positioning yourself, or already are positioned in that arena?
Well, look, I think there's no question when you follow the numbers, okay, and real estate, as much as some of these stories, as I said, in hindsight, sound very inspiring, and and look, I myself, I look back and I just think there's so much grace that's gone into it, and so many things that went right that had nothing to do with me to make these possible, in fairness. But if you follow the numbers on just population growth, okay, just stick in there. Mm-hmm. You take this golden triangle of Texas, Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, this corridor, and it has some of the largest influx numbers in the entire United States. So people are coming here, okay? Mm-hmm. And the difference between, and Austin is an incredible city. I was born in Austin, but I was raised in Dallas, went to law school in San Antonio. So I've kind of grown up on this, I-35 corridor. And those who know Texas know that basically cuts Texas in half. Starts on the Texas-Mexican border, goes through San Antonio, goes up through Austin, then Dallas, and on towards Oklahoma. But the numbers of people moving there are extraordinary. And the difference between a city like Austin and Dallas is Austin is a town on steroids, meaning it is a beautiful town, but it was a small hippie town that wasn't designed for the highway systems and the infrastructure to support that many people. So if you look at I-35, you look at the 635 loop, you look at Fort Worth, you look at the size of the airport for DFW, American Airlines headquarters, there's things that were planned in the city planning, and Houston has a lot of these similar points as well. It was built to be a metropolis. It was built to house that many people. And so because of that, it is, in a way, the city planners, had the foresight to know that this type of land, this type of topography was designed to have a lot of people. And because of that, companies like financial service companies like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America's, new tower is going to be completed right next to us on the other side of 1899 McKinney. But these are major companies that have been in Dallas for 30, 40 years. Goldman, I think, went to Dallas the first time in the late 60s. And yes, they're getting more notoriety and things now, but the financial services, AT&T, these major brands that have had a staple in Dallas are large employment hubs that are designed to scale at that level. And because of that, Dallas is suited for so many different reasons for the suburbs to continue to grow. Like if you go north on the tollway in Dallas, you got Plano, and then you're hitting, Prosper and Salina, and, it just keeps going. And, Austin has real geographic barriers to some of that stuff. We've seen it in Houston a lot, what's happened in Spring and the Woodlands, and, it keeps going out. And so there's a lot of foresight that goes into it. And on a much smaller scale, we've thought a lot about this on a 318-acre site that we own just south of Austin in a city called Kyle, Texas. So it's basically 20 miles south of Austin, 60 miles north of San Antonio, right on I-35, which that growth with Texas State University right in the middle of both as 50,000 kids is the population densities there. So looking at that land, it was two different parcels, 200 acres, 118 acres. When we have a little more time, I'll tell you the story of how the hell that came together, which was insane. But it was basically a farm. So having to go and say, wow, in 2009, Kyle only had 5,000 people and no stoplight. So how can I look at this and say, wow, what is really going to be needed? Well, we thought maybe some green space. So we designed a 60-acre green space kind of area that would have a beautiful park, beautiful walkway. And then, my dream was to have a school on a site that we built. So I donated 11 acres to the city of Kyle to build the new elementary school, which I'm proud to say opened this year. So we have an elementary school on our site, and then a huge commercial space, which we call kind of a Texas town square in the middle, where you can go to a local restaurant, you can go to your barbecue shop, and then 1,000 single-family homes and 1,400 apartment units. And so by looking at it from that vantage point, you can start to create and shift and design how a community will really be built, and then the people obviously come, to populate. And the folks that did this at a grander scale with Dallas, the way the folks that did it with the city-state of Singapore have done it with such precision and such foresight that it's pretty amazing to see it happen, because all the census bureaus that I'm reading say by like 2045, Dallas will be the most populated city in the United States of America.
Yeah, it's certainly moving in that direction, and it's kind of like Houston. It keeps spreading out, and you keep waiting for that boundary to end, and it just keeps going.
But it can, but it can. Houston on one side, which I think over the long run is good, is there's water. You go to the Port of Houston, which people like, and I grew up going to Galveston, and going down in those areas, and. But yeah, there's, and then Texas, I think, compared to a lot of other states, has done a good job. They've done a good job to create an environment, anything that's run at a big scale, whether a company, a country, or a state, surely has its things and stuff that can be improved on, and everybody's got opinions. But I think overall, in the grand scope, Texas has done a good job of being a place that can welcome different people, have diverse backgrounds, be a place that's friendly for business, friendly for individual liberties, to start companies. Median housing prices are still within the reasonable range with respect to other states that have this employment potential, which I think is very exciting. Clearly, we have fair weather climate. I say fair weather, but it was 110 degrees for, literally it's like, 90 degrees like today in the winter, but mildly somewhat fair weather climate. So yes, I think all of that together has created a really cool environment that people are going to be able to, come to, have a solid employment, raise their families, be able to hopefully buy their homes, keep their homes. And so that's pretty cool.
And the access to international markets. I mean, you got South America, you got Central America, you have, the airports in Dallas and Houston.
And you're right in the middle of the
U.S.
So you can get to L.A. fairly easy, you can get to Miami fairly easy, get to New York fairly easy. Exactly right. And there's a lot of, I like a lot of the cultural implications of having Mexico close. And I certainly like breakfast tacos and, my enchiladas and stuff too. So I'm very grateful for the Mexican food culture. I lived in Mexico, for several years. I did kind of a, not exactly like a master's, but kind of a study abroad master's certificate in international business. I studied at Monterey Tech. Which had a reciprocal exchange program with A&M. And so I got to be down there and learn the language and learn their beautiful culture. And, awesome. I don't have much time these days, but when I do, I like to go down to Playa del Carmen or get away to Tulum. And
there you go.
It's nice to be an hour and a half flight away.
So I want to shift gears now and talk about something else that I know is important to you. And, this podcast being Your Health, Your Wealth, I know that you are a strong advocate for taking care of yourself. Power of medication. I mean, not medication, power of meditation. Sorry, let me say that correct. Absolutely. The power of
I would say that meditation is medication.
You know what? You're right. You're right. So I
think
take
you said it right.
So
I think you actually said it right.
Is meditation because I absolutely, I talk to my patients all the time about different things, and I say, hey, especially these pro-inflammatory conditions, migraines, MS, and so forth. I say the key is you got to decrease inflammation throughout your body, and that stress. Everyone is stressed. So, every morning I come in, I shut the door, I do a calm app, mindfulness session, and try to incorporate that into my day. But you too speak a lot about your health and your wealth. So what does your health, your wealth mean to you?
Well, look, first of all, Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the greatest thinkers certainly in American history, has said health is wealth, and I know it sounds a little corny. I know people say that or whatever, but quite literally, I have a huge book of medical doctors. I've worked with us for years, invested with us for years. And so I've been very privileged to talk with them. And several of our investors are big, large medical malpractice insurance companies. So I get the benefit of talking to great doctors like you and learning from them and seeing the side of the Western medicine, seeing a little side of the Eastern. And I'll tell you that somebody that has their health has a lot of dreams. But somebody that does not have their health has one dream, and that's to be better. And I think that a lot of times we take it for granted, and me too. I can tell you very clearly. You've been my doctor, and in a lot of different things, and going through law school and going through being an entrepreneur, working hard stuff. I had plenty of doctors over the years tell me I had ADD, told me I have anxiety, and maybe they were right, maybe they were wrong, but giving me, say you should take this pill, you should take that, and I took them for a time and didn't take them, but quite frankly, I found for me in my journey that a lot of the problems I was experiencing that might have appeared to be emotional were in fact physiological. And so when I started really taking care of myself, and I hit the wall on a bunch of it. I was working crazy nights, not sleeping sometimes for days at a time, I didn't feel good. And so at one point when I started to cut out all the sugar, started to really get my blood work done, started to look at my hormones, started to look, and I shop at Costco, man. I mean, I can go to Costco and get a big thing of salmon, big thing of, this is not rocket science, certainly for me in my house. We meal prep militant. We boil some sweet potatoes, it costs about $2. I make some chicken breasts, and, I get the mixed veggies, organic veggies from Costco. I can make 25 meals for like $18. I mean, so it's maybe not sexy, but once I started doing that and cutting out the sugar and started to move my body a little bit more, and even taking something at a pharmaceutical grade multivitamin, and started to, stuff that seem, that are just, this is an organic being and it needs certain inputs. and looking at those, and I, albeit an extremist by nature, I'm an all-in kind of guy, as you know. I take about 200 supplements a day that are designed for me by my age management doctor, Dr. Jacob Rosenstein in Arlington. That he tests my blood, did food sensitivity tests, and this is one of the things that I feel very blessed that whatever mild success I've had in my life, this is a luxury, I know, in that regard, but the multivitamin that from Life Extensions is $9 on Amazon. They're a great company. I don't, have anything with them, but great reviews. It's you can get a good multivitamin for $9. Get a vitamin D supplement. You look at Alzheimer's, vitamin D could eliminate or lower your chances of Alzheimer's by 47% just by taking a vitamin D supplement. So if I'm a professional investor, how could I not take care of the only investment that matters, which is me? Because if I don't have me, what am I to contribute? If I don't feel good, I can't show up for my kids. I can't show up for my hundreds of clients. I can't show up with mental clarity to do, deals to help build these communities. And so I switched it the other way and said, Ari, what are you investing in? What are you putting into this? What are the inputs that you're putting in? And when I flipped the switch on that, I can tell you at 43 years old, Doc, okay, I promise you, I feel better than I have ever felt in my life. I would trade how I felt right now for any other year of my life, 25, 28, 29, for how I feel right now by changing that stuff. And I'm a huge proponent of meditation. I meditate at least 1 hour every single day, no matter what. And I have to get up a little earlier, do 30 minutes in the afternoon, and I have tested my blood. And like I said, I know some of this is a luxury, but it's much cooler for me to spend money on some vitamins and my age management doctor than it is to buy a Ferrari. So for me, this is but the basics of getting, talking to someone like yourself and taking a great multivitamin, a great probiotic, cleaning up what you eat and eat some, whatever. I don't know if people are vegan, this, that, or the other, to each their own. But I can say with my studying of this work is, don't eat sugar. Meaning if you can just sugar, and sugar is bread, and not to be, but sugar, they put it in all sorts of stuff. So I'm a proponent of just eat food. If it has a label on it, don't eat it. And if you can start with that, and you can move your body a little bit, even if it's a brisk walk. And, I'm big into, postural management and stretching. And, there's stuff that I like to do. We can always be better. But there's some basic parameters around that if you can just eliminate sugar, drink some more water, eat some more whole foods, whatever your propensity is, I think you're going to feel so much better, and then you can give more, you can move more, you can act more, you can work more. And I can directly correlate the time when I took this as seriously as I take my balance sheet. Business as an entrepreneur is an extension of you. The better I felt and the healthier I got, the bigger the business got. And it's just clear as day. I can track my cholesterol dropping with the portfolio rising. And then treating meditation like medication in the sense where, people say, oh, you have this, you have that. You and I have talked about this stuff before. And, maybe something's not right up there and maybe there isn't. But the more that I've meditated and the more that I've taken care of my health and cared for my health, the better I felt. And the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah. And coming from someone who's an investor, an entrepreneur, like I said, leading a portfolio, that statement alone, as far as investing in yourself, just like you invest in your finances, is something that I try to preach. Because, when I look back over the times when I haven't been the most productive, or things start falling through the cracks, or I'm like, man, why didn't I make this diagnosis sooner in this patient? I look back and I'm like, man, I hadn't been eating right. I haven't been, doing those things to take care of myself.
We have to forgive ourselves for being human in that regard. Me too. There's times where, look, I like French fries too. I like pizza too. I'm not, I like it too. It's not like I don't like it. And so I figured out a way, just like I do my portfolio, just like my plan is. When I'm with my kids, I eat pizza. If it's Friday night, I'm not a big drinker, and I'm not a big, look, like I said, I've had plenty of nights where I've been out late and this, that, and the other, but there's not much for me in that world anymore. But Friday night or something, I want pizza too. I get it. I want some hot wings. I want some. I like it too. So, but finding a way to say, okay, well, I'm going to eat my pizza on Friday, but Monday through Thursday, I'm eating chicken and veggies, and I'm moving my body, and this is work, and I've separated nutrition the way I treat my work. I get to work at 9 to 5. This is what I eat, and I've been able to create just for myself a personal system of just meal prepping some stuff. It seems pretty boring, I know, but the dividends that it pay are so exponential and so asymmetric, to use an investment word, that to not do it for the price. So for $50 of Costco to feel that good, to potentially create that much wealth, or to be able to give that much, love and attention and roll around on the ground with my 6-year-old, might be the damn best investment I've ever made.
I love it, man. I love it. Man, thank you so much, Ari Rastegar, for being here with me today. I tell you, if you like this episode, share it with your friends, subscribe, and the next time we do this, I'm going to come to Austin. I want to check out your studio. Heard so many good things about it, so I look forward to doing this again because, man, there's so much where we didn't get a chance to unpack, so much I wanted to get to, but that just leaves the viewers with something else they got to look forward to.
I look forward to it, man. Call me anytime. I'd love to spend time with you, and let's definitely keep moving it forward, because I think it's very powerful when, from your position, certainly as a medical doctor, sharing these things. It affects a lot of lives, man. And, and like I said, I'm a nobody from nowhere. And, these are the little things that I've kind of picked up over the thing. But I have found in my life that the little things are the big things, And again, I think cliches are cliched for a reason. People say these things for thousands of years. And guess what? If they're saying them for thousands of years, they might be true, So I think sticking to those basics, sticking to those fundamentals, because fundamentals is how you win championships.
Absolutely. So go get his book, The Gift of Failure, and follow him on his multimedia sites, and I'll post those as well. But all right, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy man, but I appreciate you spending some time with me.
Anything for you, man. Thanks again for everything. And I appreciate your wisdom and your guidance for me personally as well over the years. So I thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I hope you took some away from this. I know I did. I love talking to this guy and all of his stuff that he has out there. So, and look forward to talking to him more. So if you enjoyed this episode, please tune in, and we'll see you next time for more further episodes of Your Health, Your Wealth.